Welcome back to Sovereign Nation. I'm Michelle Malkin. Joining me now is Andy Ngo. He's the author of the book Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy, which will be released on February 2nd. Congratulations and thanks for joining us again, Andy.
Thank you for having me on, Michelle.
You bet. You've got a new piece in the New York Post reporting on all of the activities of Antifa over the past week. And I want to pull up a graphic that was included with your piece of some of the mugshots of the people involved. Who are these characters, and are they actually going to face any real consequences for what they did this week?
So in total, there were 15 arrests throughout the two riots that occurred on Inauguration Day in Portland. And around half of them I've identified as people who have been arrested and re-released last year at riots that occurred in Portland, people who had their charges dropped. One of the people who were arrested and had his charges immediately dropped by morning, that was his fourth arrest. So these are serial arrestees who, it's just like a machine. They come in one way, they get out, and then they go back in.
Yeah, repeat offenders, and of course all of the enablers in the local city establishments in the Pacific Northwest are responsible for creating this misery. A lot of people, I think, normal people who followed all of this for the past couple of years assumed that when Trump was out of office that all of this would go away, but it hasn't. Why not, Andy?
Because as you recognize, Michelle, the pretext that gave the rise of Antifa since 2016 was based on lies. They were saying that their presence was needed to fight against the incoming fascist regime of Donald Trump. And they were aided and abetted by a mainstream media, very willing journalists, mainstream Democrat politicians. And so all the variables that gave them the power to rise, to create misery, anarchy, and chaos in various cities, those conditions are still there, and they're going to remain there even as we have a new administration now. And as we saw, they hate Joe Biden very much, and they are calling for violence against any form of American government. One of the banners that was held at the riot in Portland on Inauguration Day said, "We don't want Biden, we want revenge." And on that banner was a large drawing of a Kalashnikov rifle.
Yeah, right. And, you know, we constantly hear these lectures from establishment figures on the left, whether they're in the Democrat Party or Hollywood or academia, for that matter, that words and imagery matter, that we've got to crack down on incitements to violence on the right. Last week I mentioned how President Trump had used the word fight 20 times, and this triggered a Vox journalist. They're doing everything they can to stifle peaceful right-wing free speech, and yet these people can march on the streets with banners inciting violence, inciting hatred, and of course, as we saw in a lot of the outbreaks over the past week, goading police officers and threatening violence against federal employees. How do you explain to people, because so many in my audience are so frustrated and disgusted, the disparity in treatment between every last Trump supporter who went to the Capitol rally, whether they broke inside or stood outside or were at the speeches, versus these Antifa types, many of them, as you point out, who are serial offenders, many of them guilty of real violence and, of course, organizing and conspiring on social media.
Yeah, I think the reason why you see the disparity in the treatment really comes down to something as simple as Antifa claimed to be anti-fascist. Black Lives Matter claims to be for Black lives. So in the name of so-called social justice, these people are rioting, looting, killing, and they're given an excuse to do so. You mentioned the organization that happened with the riots on Inauguration Day. It wasn't just Portland. We had rioting in Seattle. You lived there for a time. There was rioting that took place at the iconic Pike Place Market There was a little bit of violence by Antifa in Denver. And so these riots were coordinated and they were advertised weeks ahead of time on Twitter, on Facebook. So the issue is there's been no opposition to Antifa. They have allies, not just in media, but in academia and entertainment, and local city councils, mayors. And, I've been a very strong advocate for law enforcement, as have you, but we recognize that when it comes to the chain of command, the police chiefs, captains, etc., these are primarily political actors who do what they think will advance a political career. And at the moment, that means giving excuses to the far left.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of coddling. We've got about less than a minute left in this segment. Quickly, Twitter has finally gotten around to purging some of these most violent Antifa accounts. Tell us about that.
Yeah, there's been several accounts like the Revolutionary Abolitionists. They have been banned. Several others, the Base, which is this Antifa extremist center in Brooklyn, New York. I guess better late than never. I wonder why they didn't act when we were at the height of violent riots across the U.S. that lasted for months in 2020. The cynic in me wants to think that this was a political move. But I mean, I welcome it. But I mean, there's still a lot of work to do. There's still many accounts that are still online and calling for violence.
No question about it. We've got lots more to talk about. We got to take a quick break. And when we come back, more on the cancel culture and the campaign to silence Andy Ngo when we return. Stay with us.